those workarounds, they're actually much better solutions, as Sarah pointed out. Think of Tableau, for want of a better term, as pivot tables on many, many steroids, right? It is super powerful. And so I think we need to get our heads kind of around the idea that that old school stuff, probably we may not even want to do that anymore. There are probably much more powerful ways of looking at data.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go with, I submitted one data inventory. Whoops, it's scrolling. Inventory item this week. Would like confirmation I'm doing it correctly. Is there any plan?
It's from Alex Wu, and I'm trying to find your entry. So
let's move to the next one.
Yeah.
While I'm looking at it,
We can follow up with Alex on.
yeah, we can
Or is there a mechanism right now by which people could ask about their status?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
I've had other people ask me that.
Yeah. How do I know that I
it
actually
right.
filled it out correctly and that you guys got it?
So there's kind of the proactive way. I mean, we don't have a mechanism for this, but the proactive way would be to simply ask that. And I don't know that we have a communications channel to do that, but perhaps we probably should set something up like that. The other is that as we go through the process of looking at the items in the inventory, if it's not clear, you will know in some sense, right? We will get back to you and say, we're not sure what this means, or could you give us more detail on what this business process is, and that kind of thing. So certainly there will be some feedback mechanism, unless you put in an entry that is absolutely unambiguously clear. You'll hear from us. But I completely agree with Alex that there needs to be a mechanism whereby you can say, I did this once before I enter another 1,000 entries. Can you please tell me if I'm doing it the right way? I think we need to have a communications channel that does that kind of thing.
There's a related item in the chat I just wanted to bring up. It's Michelle Palmer. We are looking for more information on what kind of things we should be including in the inventory. Can you provide more details about what we should be including in the inventory?
You want to take that one, or you want me to do that?
We can tag team on that. There is actually there are actually two tabs in the. Well, it depends on the. I think the information in the form. I don't know whether you filled out the form or you're entering the spreadsheet directly. In both cases, there's fairly. I thought fairly clear information about what we're looking for. If, however, you have feedback that the descriptions that are in place right now aren't clear, that we're asking for something and you're not sure what that means, you need to it's very important that you let us know. So we've gone through several iterations, particularly with Elaine and the other communications folks, to try and come up with clear language about what we're looking for. But if anybody has any questions about there, if there's any uncertainty about what we're asking for, then we need to know what that is.
So as far as an action item for the team, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create some contact information specifically around the data inventory, and then that way you can both ask the question of, did you get my submission and is it accurate? And if you have feedback about the either the instructions, the examples, and or the questions, you'll also be able to ask through that mechanism. We'll likely funnel that through some sort of case management, so then we can all see it and be able to get on top of answering your questions.
Right. One of the issues that we face, not a bad issue, it's actually a good issue, is that we're trying to reach out to a fairly wide demographic. So people who are filling out these forms or filling in the spreadsheet are technical people, business process people, financial people, some cases student workers. It's kind of all over the map, and everybody sort of has a different take on what a business process is and so on. So Elaine and crew tried to come up with language that was in some sense neutral or more all-encompassing to give people the information that they need about how to fill out the forms. But we understand that a single format or a single query kind of form is not going to cover everybody. So there is going to be some ambiguity. And so Kevin's right. Being able to give us feedback about that process is important.
And from a hub point of view, we're interested in everything. So we've told our users, if you receive an email from someone and it has an Excel attachment, we want to know about that. If you run a report and you send an Excel to somebody, be it UCOP, be it somebody else at UCSD, we want to know about that. If you download something, sign it, and walk it over to another office, we want to know about that.
Yep.
Yeah, so actually there's a great question in chat that I just saw. Question about whether or not the inventory is applicable for all projects in ESR versus just the financial project. And I think I'm glad that it's asked because we couldn't have repeated ourselves enough times. Answer, it's for all of ESR. We recognize that there are a number of business processes and supporting applications that touch multiple data domains. And so rather than to bombard our campus community each time each project reaches the point where they need to figure this out, we don't want to send out a bunch of these and then have people do multiple data entry. So if you fill it out, and when you're filling it out, you're selecting multiple data domains, you're done. You don't need to do it again when the next project is asking for the same question. However, if you missed it because the first time around you thought it was only for finance, and then the second time around you decided to identify that the same process touches payroll data and financial data, or student data and research data, just go ahead and submit it. Our goal is to look and sort and filter by what the business processes are, what is the demographics and the impact, and then of course started to dive into which project is the most applicable to, so that way each project team have access to the same database of information, and that we're not asking people to do this multiple times.
And the other piece of that is, as our business users fill out this form, they may not call it the same thing our technical users call it. Mm-hmm. They may say, oh, this data comes from the data warehouse, but that may not be where it actually is sourced from. So filling it out allows us to connect all those dots and to find out that Bob is actually called table, which is actually called wall. And that's where we're doing our work to really figure out how does all this data flow and who really needs it. So even if you're not sure what it's really called or where it really comes from, it's still important to us that you're able to fill out the form and give us as much information as you have.
The other reason why I think this is important, and this goes to something Sarah said earlier, is that the place where the joining of different business domains is going to happen is in Tableau and Cognos. And so if we know in advance that there are kind of conventional things that people do to connect financial data with student data, or student data with research data, or whatever, we can kind of get ahead of the game and say, oh, this is the kind of report that people need. Even though the student information system work is a little bit far out in the future, we can start to look at that and say, this is the typical joining of information that people need to do to get their business done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so another question. Sorry, I'm not going to use names because some of these are just initials, but integration with UC Path systems for managing PPS. Will there be any overlap, interconnection, perhaps to assist with the upload of funding changes, salary profiles? So basically asking about integration of PPS data and UC Path with ESR, I believe.
So
yeah,
I can speak to the Activity Hub side. But
right. I think what they're, yeah. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's going to be effort to convert the existing PPS system to UC Path with a cutover date. So there won't be any sort of integration between PPS and UC Path because at some point PPS will be deprecated. And so any functionality associated with, in some example, upload of funding changes, salary profiles, and so forth, those business processes will need to be redesigned and converted over to how UC Path will handle those business processes. They will no longer be done in PPS once UC Path goes live. And so I hope that answers it. I'm not really sure what the person meant by integration of the UC Path system for managing PPS, because UC Path will replace PPS.
Okay. Will this data be available per APIs or the data warehouse so we can keep our current in-house systems running? We may have touched on this, but go ahead and.
Yeah, so this data refers to, all sorts of data, right? So the systems of record that we're going to be touching as part of ESR will sort of change and impact the way data is currently flowing, right? That's why we're all here. And so the way that information oftentimes is picked up today is via the data warehouse. In the future, that's going to change. Now, exactly how is it going to look is exactly why we're doing the registry. As we understand how people are using the information, and whether it's a system, whether it's a process, whether it's a an access database, whatever it is, understanding how people are getting that data today will help us understand what sorts of facilities we need to make available. So for example, once the registry is completed through analysis, we may find that there's a lot of demand for a very specific type of data via programming interfaces, in which case, yes, an API would be very, very appropriate. Now, if we discover that a lot of people are using a specific data for analysis, even though there currently is a in-house system running and being maintained, it may be better to migrate the use of analysis into the activity hub, but we don't know. And so without putting my foot in my mouth, I'm going to say that it depends on what the registry says, but we're hoping that we will get back to everyone on the registry, at least with some sort of response, whether it's here's how you reconnect your system, or hey, have you thought about talking to these other people instead?
Okay, we have a two-part question here. We need Excel so we can update databases to process funding changes. Departments are responsible for ensuring accurate pay, and with more than 50 people in our cluster, we need to project years in the future for grant funding. Okay, that's my question. FSR? Oh, the ESR system doesn't allow you to look back in the future, track subsequent expenses. Once ledger data loads, it seems to combine current with past data, unless you're in Sparkum. Sorry, is this relating to another one? Those are comments, but we do have the data where the activity hubs and things to address that. I'm going to skip that, and if you have, this is CAINES, if you have a question with that, let us know here, and we'll get back to it. Natalie Knowles says in the inventory under business domain, academic affairs is not listed. Would note that student affairs and academic affairs have different goals, processes, and business needs.
That's good feedback.
Great
We'll
feedback.
Take that.
Thank you, Natalie. Will indexes go away? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Indexes are part of the, will be impacted by the redesign of the chart of accounts. I would highly encourage you all to take a look at the ESR website, specifically the Financial Information Systems Project, where there's a lot of information about the mapping of the current chart of accounts to the future. There's already efforts throughout the campus for cleaning up, so to speak, the use of funds, the use of orgs, the use of indexes. And so chances are your VC area or your department may already be involved. I don't know. But if you have more specific questions about indexes and how that's going to work, I would highly encourage you to reach out to the ESR core team for finance. Folks there are knee-deep in the chart of accounts design, and they would be the best people to advise on how indexes will be, or the concept of indexes will be recreated or represented in the new Oracle system.
Thank you. And we do have a shortcut to the Financial Information System team and more information about this CCOA at esr.ucsd.edu/FIS for Financial Information System. Okay. ASR is a sorry, I'm not sure what these are. If we already access data through data packages via BI tools, do we still need to fill out the form?
We would love you to.
And I'm looking at the last couple of questions. I think there's some clarification now on EFSR is a Research Service Corps product that pulls financial link data. Yes, there's tons of products all over campus that pull financial link data. And so I would absolutely register the use, specifically business processes that run through this EFSR. There's tons of them, trust me. We see them all the time. And the big question is going to be, how are they currently accessing the data? What are they accessing it for? And what we're going to be doing is we'll need to figure out whether or not the capabilities and the business processes that run through this application will be handled directly via the new business process in Oracle, or if we'll need to continue to facilitate the integration for this system in the future. How you access the data may change, but if there is a business need and that business process is not supported, then yes, we will absolutely be working towards providing a facility in which you can continue to get that financial data.
Yep. And I saw a question go by asking about what will be in the activity hubs.
I saw that, yeah, right there.
Yes. So right now we have quite a bit of financial data that's already available via the Activity Hub in Cognos, and that is operating ledger, DOPes, so payroll. We're currently working on general ledger information. We have operating ledger with projections. So we have groups that are already starting their migration into Cognos from out of QueryLink. They're learning the tools, they're learning what data is available, they're blending their data with the research data so that they can get funds and awards in the same report. We also have some groups that have their own specialized financial packages, and we're having them register on the inventory because those packages, because they're specialized, those will eventually be retired, as the pieces that make them specialized will be brought into the larger financial Activity Hub package so that all of campus has access to it or can potentially have access to it. So even if you're already using a BI tool and even if you're already using a BI package, it may not be one that continues to be supported because we may be rolling it into the larger Activity Hub, whether it's Financial Activity Hub, Student Activity Hub, Research Activity Hub, Employee Activity Hub, Alumni and Advancement Activity Hub, Facilities Activity Hub, or Workflow Activity Hub.
So we should just end it with AH, right, or some shorthand. But I think it's important to a follow-on question is, how do I know what's going to come first, second, and third? Because we want all the activity hubs, and we want it yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And so, can you speak a little bit to just sort of how you're aligning these activity hub design and implementation with the community of practice and with the fact that ESR is not implementing all the systems simultaneously. So love for you to answer that.
Go ahead. So we are closely tied with the ESR projects, and we're moving along with their release dates. Because we needed to start with something before ESR even started, we started with the Student Activity Hub. So we have the Student Activity Hub in production. People can use that to get undergraduate, graduate, medical student, and school of pharmacy data, including summer sessions. And we're continuing to improve on that. We're going to be adding LMS, BAC, DARS. We have a list that's 40 deep of different data sources that we're going to be adding to the Student Activity Hub. We're also actively working on the Employee Activity Hub, following along with the UC Path. Yep, we are collaborating with the Office of the President on that. They're sending us their information. We're also working with UC Irvine because they've already developed some really good reports on UC Path that their customers and our own customers really enjoyed. And then we're talking with the financial department because we really want to be able to enable people to start their conversion over to Cognos or Tableau before Oracle goes live, so that they're not trying to do two things at once. Right. They've already got one thing covered. For the Research Activity Hub, we have the COES data. We have a COES package, an award package, an EPD package that is being very well used. And those users really get the benefit of having less of an impact when Quali goes live, because the Quali data will simply flow into their reports, and their reports will continue to work going forward. And then as Quali goes live, we will add the new fields or the new features to the Research Activity Hub. So what they have right now will continue to be of use, and then they'll just enhance it as they get used to the new Quali processes. So
an example of that would be, for instance, right now in COES, the way proposal budgets are created is via an Excel spreadsheet attachment. In the new system, people will be building their budgets directly in the system and submitting them directly via system to system. And so those are incredibly valuable data assets that we will want to flow into the Research Activity Hub, but that will likely come after the Quali system is implemented, since there is nothing in there today.
Yep, need data first.
Yeah, so just those are kind of some of the examples. But yeah, okay, so that's
and then you'll be able to take that Quali budget and compare it against what you get out of finance.
Yeah.
The operating ledger, general ledger, however that happens. Yeah.
Okay. Will the new COA make it easier for inter-campus transfers? So I think that's kind of like a yes or no. So my understanding of the chart of accounts redesign is that it's built based on a standard common chart of accounts that was designed up at UCOP with participation from many of the campuses. There was a sort of a decision and sort of a design that was made, and it was published several years ago, with the understanding that UCOP and all of the campuses are supposed to migrate to this new common chart design by a certain date. I think 2020, but I could be wrong. But basically, the idea here is that if you don't adopt this new common chart of accounts, your campus will then be responsible for making the translation upstairs when reporting happens to the corporate office up at Oakland. And so the understanding for us is that as we're designing our common chart of accounts or our chart of accounts here at UCSD, we are building it to be fully in alignment with the common chart, which in theory should support inter-campus or inter-institution transfers and the likes. However, I think that would be I think operationally, it would be something that we would want general accounting to speak to. Is there information at ESR that UC.edu about what or how our current sub-indexes will be handled? We need subs to separate, looks like COPIs on the same project. Oh, okay. I think I know this. So I can't speak to the sub-indexes, but the way that the funds and indexes have been used to separate expenses and grouping them by people, that's something that will likely change, because the way that we have used them historically is because of constraints or sort of lack of feature within IFAS. In Oracle, there is a very robust sort of contract management, project management module, which essentially is post-award management, and that should include all of the granularities necessary to slice between things like an award with a different IDC rate, or if certain expenses have to roll up to a COPI, or roll up to a different department for anything that might be interdepartmental collaborations.
I like Maria's question. Are there plans to include access to UC corporate data?
I had a request from the foundation. They wanted access to investment data, which right now they get as a file feed. And so yes, I think there's a lot of desire for that. I don't know what the stomach is to also house UCOP data here.
Well, even if we don't house it, it's a matter of...
Me versus direct access?
Yeah, it says, is there plans to include access to UC corporate data?
I don't know. Add it to the inventory, Maria, and we'll look into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Have an OP activity hub.
OP activity hub.
Vince wants to have like an external information activity hub, like where
like publications,
public information,
data.
stats on how other colleges are doing, so we can do
comparisons and benchmarks. That makes sense.
So it's not an out there question.
All right. Next one, let's see. It's my understanding that once the identity management tool goes live, all employee numbers may change. Will there be a way to map current employee number to the new number, and how will this tool fit into Gholmieh and Oracle?
Yes. Part of the identity management project is creating that map, and not just between Oracle and Gholmieh. It is between every single system on campus, including the extension offices, including students, employees, faculty, everybody and anything. And that will be available via reporting, the entire map. How it plays into Gholmieh and Oracle, I don't know that piece.
So on the transactional application side, the best way to think about the employee ID changing is to not think about the employee IDs changing. Is to think about the employee ID as you know it today as your PPS ID, and the future employee ID to be the UC Path ID. Somebody who's worked at the university when PPS was around will have both. Somebody who started working at UCSD once PPS goes away should have one. The idea here is we all have numerous identifiers. All of us here have numerous identifiers. You just probably don't even know it. And the goal will be to make that mapping available both through reporting as well as via APIs. Now, how is that exactly going to work? That is actually a major component of the UC Path project team to figure out, because they're going to be the first one to significantly change a very common unique identifier that's used on campus, which is our PPS ID number. Now, we know already that the PPS ID number will be shipped up to UC Path, and so there will be a mapping within the UC Path system for those of us that have a PPS ID, and that information will flow downstream into our distributed ODS. Now, how we then serve that up to the campus is going to be heavily dependent on the folks that are entering the information into the registry, because depending on what we see, we may choose to make that information available in one way or the other. So that's why the registry is very important.
Yeah, and it's going to be a critical field for connecting and having data flow appropriately from system to system.
Yeah, and actually in the Gholmieh system, having worked on that project when it was COIA's, we load people data, employee data into the system, and then folks go in there and they select their PIs, and their PPS ID is in there. So there will need to be data conversion that will have to take place as these systems roll out, but all of the project teams are aware.
Good question.
Great question. All right, what's the next one? Ken. Just a comment. I'm sure that you realize how daunting, yes, this is for the departments, especially the smaller ones where the work and understanding these systems are not spread out or shared amongst the staff in the unit, and a few must bear the burden of understanding and implementing them.
Yes.
We totally hear you, Ken. It's hard. If this was easy, it would have already been done and we wouldn't be sitting here in a room together. I think the key here is really understanding the fact that business processes are changing. We're not asking everyone to reinvent what they have today. If we were here trying to recreate what we have, let's just stop now, pause, and keep our mainframes. If we're going to be swapping all of these things out, we're going to be significantly changing business processes across the campus. And so I highly encourage departments to look at what they're doing and not necessarily question it, but at least find out how what they're doing may change. Because you may find that some of the things that you thought you had to recreate may not be true. You may be able to point somebody to a facility that is now available. That may not be available previously. So I want to really encourage folks, because of how daunting the task is in front of us. When you start inventorying all the systems and all the ways that you get data, that list is going to be really long. And our hope is that we're not simply recreating that list.
Yeah.
One way of looking at this is that over the past 25 or 30 years, the gap between what you get from the mainframe systems and what you actually need has grown substantially. And what we're essentially trying to do with ESR is minimize that gap as much as possible.
Quickly.
And so a lot of the things that we've built over the past decades have been to fill that gap. And ESR, in theory, is going to help minimize that gap to the extent that it's possible. So a lot of the gap filling things that you've done are now going to be in the new enterprise systems, whether they're Oracle Financials, what we get from Tableau or Cognos. So it's important to keep that in mind. And I think in some sense, and this is daunting to be sure, but the thing you want to do is you want to kind of go to first principles in some sense and ask, what do I need the data for? This is about downstream data consumption. And the question that you're asking is, what am I asking the data to tell me, right? Rather than, I download student grades. What we're asking really is, why are you downloading student grades? Not in a nosy kind of way, but really, what are you trying to accomplish by downloading student grades? Because you couldn't do it on the old legacy system. Yeah. And it's very possible that in the new student information system or through Tableau and Cognos, the reason why you needed to download those grades or whatever is answered in the new system, so you don't need to preserve the old way of doing it.
Yeah.
And in some sense, that's actually good, because now you're not in the business of, okay, every year I have to tweak my pivot table so that it does this new thing. And that's not really my day job. My day job is to help students graduate on time or to help my faculty get grants or whatever. My day job is not to compensate for the deficiencies of IFAS and ISIS. In some sense, it's our job to configure these new systems so that you don't have to do that work and you can concentrate on what your day job is.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is that this inventory really is your opportunity to tell us what you need. Mm-hmm. And we're asking for feedback. We're listening to the feedback. And we're going to be reviewing it and coming back to you with questions, because as much as we know about data movement throughout campus and the processes, you are the guys, you're the people that are in it every day. You're in the trenches, so you know, and you have great ideas and you have great suggestions. So we want to hear them, and that's what the inventory is really going to help us do.
Right. One of the things that we're going to be looking for, or that we are looking for, is essentially patterns of data consumption. So if we discover that every single department on the academic side does this kind of financial reporting in order to get their jobs done, or does this kind of reporting on student information, that is either something that we can do a configuration in Oracle Financials, or that Sarah and her team can create a report that everybody can use kind of uniformly inside of Tableau and Cognos. So we don't know all the answers to how people consume data and why it's important that they consume data in the way that they do. And so this is an opportunity to communicate to us so we can do the necessary configuration in advance, whether it's in Tableau, Cognos, Oracle Financials, the new student information system, or whatever.
All right, next one down the list. When seeing, oh, this is really specific, so I don't know, I may not know this. When seeing the proposed budget compared to the actual expenditures, will it also include personnel months or percentage of variances? That's super specific. I'm guessing this is like a specific report.
It is. Janice, I'd suggest that you email bizintel@ucsd.edu, and my team will be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if it's like in Tableau already, adding like a variance or breaking things out by personnel months is probably very doable.
The answer, my gut answer is yes, we can do that in Cognos. But the exact details of how to do that, one of my teammates will have to help you with that.
Great. So there's this other list here. So I'm going to look at this other one now. Object developable. Okay, so will this handle any preferred name data for staff and faculty? Great question, because preferred name and preferred pronouns are not the most important thing right now that everybody's talking about. It's super important, and what I can tell you is that the new transactional systems, including things like UC Path, our new identity management system, are all capable of supporting preferred names. The big question, though, is going to be where is the system of truth or record for preferred names? And because we, in theory or ideally, do not want to capture this information in all of our subsystems or different enterprise systems. But yes, preferred name, preferred pronouns, a number of these things such as non-binary identification for gender are all things that are new requirements. And it goes back to what David was saying earlier, the gap between what IFAS, ISIS, and PPS can do, you know, in today's world means that we're building more custom systems to support the capturing of preferred names. In the modern ERP or the modern enterprise systems world, that's a configuration. You pick a field, you call it preferred name, set some validation rule, and you move on. And so the hope is that we would not have to do any custom work, but we will have to make some business decisions as it relates to how this information will be captured, what are the rules associated with being able to establish something as your preferred name. We don't want a bunch of Batmans and Supermans running around, and then where will it be housed? And then how do we make it available for consumption, particularly within reporting, as well as within downstream business applications?
The good news here is that this is a conversation that it's already being had and has been going on for at least a year or more now in the context of students, because there are requirements that come down from the legislature, requirements that come down from OP about how we treat our student populations in terms of preferred names, gender identity, and so on. So, and it's a very complex space for obvious reasons, and there are privacy reasons and so on that play into this. So it is a conversation. I think a lot that we're learning in that space is going to be applicable to handling faculty and student identity as well. It won't have all of the answers, but the questions are already being asked, and we already have templates for how we want to handle this from a procedural fashion, how we store it in our information systems, and so on.
Susan asks, how will the new platform data, ISIS, to be rolled out to support the import of student data to Red Rock, TutorTrack, mostly to avoid downtime and using the tracking system? And then apologies for adding the same question in the chat. Thank you, Susan. So actually, there's a couple of pieces to this particular one. So ISIS will be here until ISIS is replaced. And so integration between ISIS with other systems such as our tracking applications like Red Rock and like VAC, Virtual Advising Center, will continue to have to be supported in its current technology. But once the new systems are coming online, there will be a lot of discussions about remediating or replumb the data between something like a Red Rock versus a new student information system. There may even be conversations down the road, and I don't know this to be a fact, but about what should come out of a student information system. Is there a tracking capability? I don't know, but those are definitely things to consider as we move into the procurement process for a new student information system in early 2019 when we'll begin the RFP process. Now, one thing I did wanted to pass over to Sarah is the data that's currently in Red Rock and in VAC. What's going to happen to them until a new student system gets in?
Well, right now they're on the list to be added to the Student Activity Hub. We've rolled out the ISIS information, and we're working on LMS. Red Rock's on the list. ProSam jumped the line and is now at the top.
Did it?
Yeah, it did.
Financial aid data,
yes.
For those that don't know ProSam.
Yeah, ProSam's new financial aid. So the ISIS data and the Red Rock, the VAC data, that'll continue to exist in the Activity Hub, even as the new plumbing comes in and ISIS is replaced with a new system. You will get a continuity in your reporting so that you'll be able to see the historical information with the new information. And part of our job, my team's job, is to ensure that there's no duplication or no overlap between the old systems and the new systems.
Yeah, that's actually a really important aspect of our BI strategy. And so just touch on it briefly here. The reason why we're rolling out these activity hubs, in some cases ahead of a new system going in, is because of that continuity. So for example, you could be using a system like VAC or like Red Rock today. You get your data flowing into the activity hub, you're building your analysis directly in Tableau or Cognos, and then in comes a new system. Well, we don't want you to now have to uproot all of your reports, all of your analysis. The things that we're looking at from a business and analytical value perspective of those data should not change. Just because the system is different, just because the capabilities are different, doesn't necessarily mean that we look at students differently. And so in a lot of ways, the hope is that we would not be uprooting all of your reporting because of new transactional systems going in. And that's why in some cases, having the activity hubs go live early is actually a great thing. And we're trying to catch up now on all of the other different activity hubs that are needing to come online in time for the new enterprise systems to go live.
Yep, and that's pretty standard in the DW, data warehousing, BI world, is to have systems change or to blend multiple systems together so that our team does all the work under the covers and you are less impacted.
Okay, so Susan, just on that note, Susan had a follow-up. There have been updates occurring recently, pause, disable use of the tool, manpower. So Susan, I'll follow up with you separately on that because I want to find out more on that SSO specifically. That's really specific to TutorTrack. So I'll separately follow up with you on that, just so, because I don't know offhand right now on SSO changes that's impacting TutorTrack. Okay, thanks. Sorry, wish I could know it off the top of my head. How long will the transition period be when moving from existing systems to the new system? For those departments that have internal systems and processes, we may need much time to translate the data for these new systems in order to keep some of our current in-house systems running. So how much time do they have to remediate their applications? It depends. The reason why it depends is because in some of the projects we have more control over, and in some of the projects we have very little control over. UC Path, for example, is one that I can't tell you exactly how much time I can allocate to downstream systems remediation, simply because UCOP tells us what the timeline is. We don't really have a say. For other projects, on the other hand, it's different because we have a little bit more say on how much time we can allocate. And so our goal as each of these project teams are starting to evaluate this inventory is to try and give everyone as much time as possible. Understanding that, to be fair, a lot of the new business processes are being designed as we speak. And so in some ways, they can't tell you what they don't know, but they want to tell you as much as they can as early as possible, recognizing that if you have custom software, it will likely take you quite a bit of time to reintegrate that custom software with new data sources. And of course, there's all sorts of complexity that goes with that. But yeah, I can't tell you exactly how long. It will vary from project to project. And in some projects, there may be things that will, completely grind the university to a halt, and we have to prioritize those. In some projects, there may not be that much integration to deal with, and you may have plenty of time. So I think it just really depends on the project and what the registry says.
And that brings up another point for the inventory. That's why it is so critical, is as the information comes in, and David, you can speak more to this.
The analysis aspect of it.
Yeah, it's being evaluated and it's being grouped per project so that we can prioritize it, and so we can reach out to you so that you can remediate along with the timelines of what's going on.
Right. And the part that you don't see right now is think of this as phase one of the inventory, where we're collecting enough information, trying to refine that information so that we can do that kind of triage or prioritization and grouping of things. So for example, one of the things that we see already is that we'll get a group of applications that really kind of all address the same business process, but for historical reasons or whatever other reasons, individual applications have been created, but if you look at them, they say, well, they're really all pieces of the same business process. So we need to be able to do that kind of analysis for one thing. But this is a preliminary phase for applications that have actually been built. I mean, things that have been built, Java, C++, whatever, that your IT shop or whoever has built. There's a second phase where we go through and we actually ask very, very detailed questions on those. What operating system does it run on? Does it live in the cloud? Did you buy it off the shelf? Is it something you built on your own? What tables does it talk to in the data warehouse? All of these kinds of things. What access methods you use to get to the data warehouse? Is it talking to an API? Is it doing any a data transfer or a data download? There's a much more detailed kind of analysis of those kinds of applications for us to help you figure out how the remediation is going to happen. It is true, and I don't mean to trivialize the amount of work that's going to happen, because there is going to be refactoring of existing applications, but it's not as if we're going to say, yeah, that looks pretty hard, good luck. That's not what we're saying. The goal here is to do, in this kind of second phase, a much more detailed analysis, technical analysis of what your requirements are, so we can figure out how the integration plan that we have dovetails with what your needs are in terms of doing remediation of your applications. Because we understand perfectly that there are going to be applications that do need to continue to live. No enterprise system is going to meet absolutely every single need of the campus, and there's always going to be some sort of gap that we need to fill. And so nobody in this room believes that the enterprise system is going to solve all possible problems, and you're not going to have local applications at all anymore. We recognize that that's going to be the case, and so the goal here is to try to remediate the existing applications for which there is a clear demonstrated business need, and our job is to help you do that. And so, as much as Sarah said, as much information we can extract from the process, either in this preliminary phase or later down the road, is kind of mission critical for us to help do the remediation.
So Ken,
Yeah, Ken, you're on my list.
okay, cool. What's next? And then I emailed Susan already, and the last one, great discussion. So please provide information on where staff can access this recording and meeting notes. Okay, I think Elaine can do that. Absolutely.
Being recorded.
This is being recorded. Okay.
We are recording, and this information will be put up on the ESR website, the public site, esr.ucsd.edu/data. And you can also find more information on this entire, the changes in the data that are coming, the inventory, and all this.
Deadline to submit inventory. I'm up against a grant deadline at the moment, and a bit more time would really be helpful. David, timeline.
I thought you control the timeline.
I do not control anything. Contrary to popular belief, I'm.
Well, I think the latest one was the
Mid-January?
Mid-January.
Mid-January.
Mid-January, okay.
Okay, so keep in mind that mid-January is what we would like, so that we could do the initial pass at it. It doesn't mean that that's going to be the end. People can continue to add afterwards if they think of new processes, if they miss something, if somebody comes back from leave and they were the master of the process, then they can always add it later. But it's just an FYI to you that IT is planning to do a review at the end of January. So if you want to be included in that first review, mid-January is your deadline.
And that includes, you know, if you don't have complete information, if your technical person is out on leave, or you're not sure how this works, or your business process was invented 30 years ago before you were born, there's those kinds of
those
things.
exist. Yes,
those exist. Putting something in there, call it a placeholder, so that we know to contact you, so that we can dig down on the details. If there is no line in the inventory, then we don't know to talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's more problematic than incomplete or not fully accurate information, because at least we have something to go on, and that's important. On a related note, something that came up, somebody came up to me, or somebody asked during a presentation yesterday at Process Palooza. I mostly work in the student area, and my business processes are all about students. Do we have a different deadline than the people who are in the financial information system? And the answer is, you know, I'll channel Kevin here, yes and no. It's yes, in the sense that the sooner you get information in, the better. But we understand that financial information is in some sense more mission critical, because the financial information system is going to be coming online sooner than the student information system. There's not a definite answer to that. I can't tell you, well, 6 months from now is fine for student data, or a year from now, or whatever. My answer will still be as soon as you can get it in there, with the understanding that financial things, particularly things that are kind of related to the new systems that are coming online, those really are critical to get in by the mid-January deadline.
And one thing just to add to that, it's also true that a lot of the business processes are, yes, they're a student, but they may touch financial data. And so, but really the hope is if you have these things that have kind of hybrid uses of data, or multiple domains of data being consumed through a particular process or system, you just have to do it once, right? So you may do it now. When we get to student, you know, you don't have to do it again. So there's definitely the benefit of doing that. But yes, I think David's absolutely right. If you're dealing just with students, we're likely going to have to set a date once the student system is selected, for which we will then be doing a huge solicitation again for information. But right now, our focus is definitely research, finance, and people.
Here's another reason why it's good to get things in early as possible. One department may put in a business process for some sort of thing that they do for their students, right? And if all the other departments say, nah, the deadline's mid-January for the financial stuff, I'm going to wait until December of next year to put in my student information. From our perspective, we look at that and we say, it's only one department that has this business process. It doesn't seem particularly important to us. But if all of you put in, you know, if 44 academic departments put in the same business process, we look at that and we say, from a prioritization perspective, this is super important. Everybody is doing this thing. And it doesn't start to look like the special snowflake business process. It is a mission critical business process that's important to get our undergraduates out the door, for example. So that's why it's important to get kind of your vote in early on, because if lots of people, if we start seeing patterns in the business processes that people identify, that provides us with very useful information to say, this looks like, we look at this and we say, half of all academic departments have entered this. That looks like maybe the other half of the academic departments probably do something very similar. So that's another reason why I think it's very useful for us to see these kinds of things early on.
A quick question. Let's say I'm filling out the inventory. Do I fill it out for my entire team, or does everybody on my team put the same information into the inventory?
Generally, we want one person filling it out. I mean, obviously, if there are 5 people who work with this business process, it's 5 people putting in the same business process is not meaningful, really. I mean, it doesn't provide us a whole lot of information. And if you look at the form, both the form and the Excel and the spreadsheet, it has a business owner and it has a technical contact. We need that information because there has to be some person that we talk to who is essentially, we're going to view authoritative for this business process. And it essentially causes the department to kind of gather the people together.
Say who owns this thing.
Well, and which is important. I mean, if you think about business process analysis and the things that we were talking about yesterday at Process Palooza, there has to be sort of consistency of view about business processes, and it's a side artifact of this process, this activity, that the departments kind of have to say, oh, what is this business process that we're using? Because the worst case scenario is if there are 5 different people in the department and each of them has a slightly different view of the business process. That's really problematic because it's hard for us to do gap analysis when the business process in the department is 5 different things, but it's really the same thing. That's very difficult for us to deal with.
Okay. All right. I think we're wrapped up for this session. I hope that this was helpful, and we'll be looking forward to any feedback that you might have. And if this is something that you think was helpful, you want another one, or you got friends that wish they were here, let us know. And we will do everything we can to continue to push information out to the community, as well as make more of these Q&A sessions available.
Susan just submitted a last-minute question.
Oh.
Thanks, Susan.
Hi, Susan. Sorry. My eyes are not. Many departments hire student staff by using ASES platform for submitting applications, student data for hiring criteria, GPA and grades. The system sends out the offer letters. We are a user. Will the person to put this on the people inventory be the overseer of it, or should we add it just in case?
I'd say add it just in case, Susan. And I say it this way because as a customer, you may have a different perspective on it than the owner does. And unless you have specifically spoken to the owner and you know the owner has put it on the inventory, we want to make sure it gets on the inventory.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the perspective part is very important, because the reason why somebody builds something versus the reason why somebody is actually using something sometimes don't always coincide. Yep. And so knowing the variances in there is helpful.
Yep.
Thank you for asking that.
There's a difference between owning the application and owning the process.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Susan. All right. Thank you all. Elaine, you want to close it out?
I am good. I think, thank you everybody for calling in or logging in. Look for this session and notes at esr.ucsd.edu/data. And we'll be doing some more of these sessions, so look out for that too. Thank you.